So I have just finished a 6-week trial of a very strict ketogenic diet. If you'd asked me 2 months ago, there would have been no chance at all that I would have believed you that this kind of thing is something that I would even consider doing. So that's really big. It was a very interesting experiment. And so today I'm going to tell you what it is, why I did it, what the results were, and finally what I learned from the whole process. Hi everyone, Paul Mikulev here from Autism from the Inside. I make weekly videos exploring the nuances of neurodiversity and emotional intelligence, or at least I usually do. In this video today, I think I will leave it up to you to find what is the link between those two things and what I'm actually talking about. But a couple of weeks ago, you might have remembered a video where I told you I was thinking of radically changing my diet in an attempt to help with my fatigue and brain fog, and at the time, a lot of physical fatigue as well. And so today, I'm going to let you know the results of that experiment. So, very quick caveat, I absolutely do not recommend you copy what I have just done. Part of the experiment for myself involved maybe 100 hours of research over this 6 weeks, and knowing what I know now, I made lots of mistakes, things that I could not possibly have understood at the time. And so if you're going to do anything, I would strongly recommend seeking some kind of medical supervision. As part of the process in the beginning, I got one of those little stick-on blood glucose monitor things, just because I really like data. And I met another woman who had a similar thing, and we got chatting about it, and I was telling her about this trial that I was doing, and she said, well, I'm diabetic, which means that if I tried the diet that you're doing, I would literally die. So, word of caution, this is pretty serious stuff. Do not copy what I'm doing. Okay, let's get into it. What is the trial? Why did I do it? What were the results that came out of it? And what are the lessons that I've taken from the whole process? So essentially, I tried a diet called ketogenic diet, which is essentially an extremely low carb diet. In a very simplistic way, our bodies need fuel, and that fuel is fats and sugars. And in a ketogenic diet, by cutting out all sugar, you're essentially forcing your body to rely on burning fat for energy. The theory being that by doing that, it's going to learn by practice how to do that more efficiently, and that has ongoing health benefits. So I cut down to 20 grams of carbs per day for 6 weeks. That number is important. We'll come back to that later. You might notice I interchange the words carbs and sugar and glucose. They're all essentially the same thing for this conversation, because when you eat carbs or sugar, your body turns them into glucose. I'm trying to avoid too much biology from the 100+ hours of research that I've done. But essentially, your body still needs some sugar to maintain your blood sugar, for example. And so by eating such a low amount, it actually forced my liver to create the sugar that it needs. I won't go into the biology too much, but essentially the strict ketogenic diet that I tried cut out almost all carbs, severely restricted my body's access to sugar, and taught it to shift its fuel source to rely on burning fats instead. So you're probably thinking that sounds quite extreme, right? And I thought that too. I thought a keto diet was essentially a fad diet for weight loss, and I didn't really give it any serious attention until recently. However, when I was researching fatigue, one of the things that came up the most was an anti-inflammatory diet. And basically all the advice I could find on anti-inflammatory diets suggested reducing sugar, increasing healthy fats like omega-3s and things like that. And there was a lot of talk around preventing large fluctuations in blood sugar. And if you take that to the extreme, eating no sugar, then in theory at least, you don't get blood sugar spikes and your system is a lot more regulated. At least that's what I was reading. And if that was the only thing, I probably wouldn't have been sold, but there was a second aspect to this that made me think it's worth trying. I knew that my body needed rest. I needed to do lots of internal repair, maybe cognitive repair, maybe physiological repair. I just knew I needed some kind of regenerative process. And I was essentially reading that when we eat, a lot of that repair process pauses so that the body can focus on digestion. And because fats are such a slow burning fuel, it doesn't really matter when you eat, like a little fat molecule that I ate an hour ago versus one that's been stored in my system for decades. My body doesn't really know the difference between those two. It's like I'm breathing in oxygen. Is that oxygen from like my house plant, like in the last 24 hours, or was it created by a microorganism a billion years ago? My body doesn't know the difference. Like the molecule is the same. That's probably quite convoluted, but when my brain added up all of these things, it came to the conclusion that trialing this very different way of nourishing my body was worth an experiment. So, the results. I'll start by telling you the main thing you probably want to know, which is, did it cure anything? And the answer is not really. I learned a lot of really interesting things, and some of which I'm going to take forward, but this is absolutely not a magic miracle thing, and the results that I'm about to share with you are kind of expected when you think about it. So the first thing I noticed, and this is very well documented and expected, is that my hydration became a challenge. When you're on a keto diet, your body has a lot less stored glucose, and apparently glucose holds water. So it was much, much harder for me to stay hydrated. I had to actively take electrolyte supplements. I had to be really vigilant drinking water. I was going to the bathroom every 2 hours. It was a bit of a challenge. The second thing that happened is that my heart rate variability that I track over my sleep significantly reduced, like halved from like 60 to 30, that level of halve. And I could feel this in my body. It felt like my heart was working overtime, and I didn't really know what that was. Apparently that's pretty common as well. In hindsight, and I only just realized this like in the last week, I didn't realize that your body needs a certain level of sugar for certain basic functions. And apparently that figure is about 50 grams of glucose per day. So unwittingly, what I'd done by jumping straight to the really strict less than 20 grams of carbs per day keto, I was forcing my liver to work overtime to produce that extra glucose that the rest of my body needed. And what this felt like, especially in the first couple of weeks as my liver was getting used to this, it felt like my body was really heavy. It felt like I had a baseline energy, but it was pretty low. And I felt like if I tried to exert myself, I just didn't have a lot of strength. It's really interesting, actually. I'll see if I can find the screenshot, but I went for a run about 2 weeks into this whole keto transition, and you can see that my heart rate basically maxed out at about 145 beats per minute. And that was physiologically noticeable for me. Like I was running and I just felt like, look, I could keep doing this. There's absolutely no problem, but I just can't push myself past this barrier. Compare that to a run I did the other day. Again, I'll see if I can find the screenshot for you. Same run, same circuit, just a couple of weeks later, only this time I'd already transitioned back to eating carbs. And you can see that periodically my heart rate actually gets to its maximum for a little bit. And what I realized, again, this is my very little understanding of biology from like 100 hours of research at home. Also, isn't it incredible that I can sit at home with nothing but my phone and do 100+ hours of research on such a niche topic? That is, we live in an amazing age. Anyway, what I realized without turning this into a biology lecture is that stored glucose in muscles comes mostly from the food that we eat, and it takes a very, very long time to replenish that if your liver has to create it all. Anyway, back to the macro level stuff that I actually experienced. The other biggest difference was eating such rich food was really tough on my stomach for a while before it got used to it, but eventually it did get used to it, and then that was fine. The other real challenge is it's actually really hard to get enough calories to not lose weight. It was a constant battle every day to make sure I ate enough. Like I was having to count everything that I ate. I counted every gram of everything that I ate for about 6 weeks, which was a massive effort. It turns out having such a strict keto diet is almost impossible without either counting carbs and calories and everything and making sure you're getting enough of some things and not other things, or picking one thing and just eating exactly the same thing every day with no variety so you know exactly what you're getting, or thirdly, cutting out vegetables entirely. Even things like broccoli needed to be in moderation for me to stay under that limit. Anyway, quite extreme. I know, it was an experiment. The other question I had before starting is, what am I going to actually eat? Like, do I need to eat 5 steaks a day? How do I get enough into my system if I can't eat any kind of grains? 2 things. Number 1, I wasn't happy eating a lot of meat. It's really expensive and I don't like doing it. Number 2, meat doesn't have any fiber, and turns out trying to get enough fiber on a keto diet is one of the biggest challenges. So what my diet ended up looking like is essentially full of nuts, Greek yogurt, chia seeds, soy milk, dairy, eggs, cheese, spinach. Spinach is great. And then topping up with as much veggies as my carb limit would allow. So anyway, overall, it was fine. I was really surprised how easy parts of it were. I literally did not get hungry. That was one of the biggest things I wasn't expecting. But I could easily go 16, 18, 20 hours. Actually, let me check the time now. It's been about 20 hours since my last meal. And the reason for that, I'm not on keto anymore either. The reason for that is because I was supposed to have breakfast, but I was still full from my lunch yesterday. So it turns out when you have a high fat diet, it's really hard to eat because your body just doesn't want to eat. At least that's what I found. Finally, what have I learned from this process? What am I actually going to take away from all of this interesting stuff? But, everything's interesting. Well, the first lesson from all my research is just getting an appreciation for how adaptable our bodies can be. No carb, low carb, high carb, my body knows how to handle all of those situations. The second thing I realized is that I actually need to add salt to my food because without that, it's hard to stay hydrated. I had internalized this social message that salt is bad for you, apparently, whereas actually, unsurprisingly, too much salt is bad for you. You can replace salt with anything. Too much anything is bad for you. So I was getting too little, and that's why I was dehydrated, and I need to actively manage my hydration better. Some other quick things, carbs are good for you. Your muscles need them, your body needs it, and if things are going well, then your body knows how to process it. So in my case, I'm going back to eating a significant amount of carbs, mostly for 2 reasons. Number 1, I want my muscles to have significant glycogen stores so that when I do exercise, I can use them. And number 2, it makes my diet so much more flexible and enjoyable and less of a strain on my executive function. So my personal philosophy now, after all of that research and experimentation, the only thing that I try and minimize is the amount of processed refined sugar. Because unsurprisingly, too much of something means my body has to work harder to process that. And yes, the irony of the fact that I just spent 6 weeks stressing out my body to create its own sugar by denying it is not lost on me. The other thing that I plan to experiment more with personally is the idea of eating less frequently. The word fasting doesn't feel right to my experience because I'm technically fasting now because I haven't eaten in 20 hours, but I'm not fasting. I'm just not eating right now. I'll eat later. I'll eat when my body's hungry. So in that sense, I want to give my body the gift of not having to process food right now. Just leave it alone. Let it do what it wants to do, what it needs to do, especially in terms of the repair work. And then later, when it needs more fuel, I'll give it more fuel. And if your brain is anything like mine was about 2 months ago, you're probably thinking, how on earth do you not eat for 20 hours? And that is a really good question. And I've recently learnt an answer that makes it all make sense. And as a little bonus at the end of this video, I'm going to go on a rant and share my excitement about this new answer that I found. Essentially, the answer is, how efficiently does your body burn fat as fuel? If the answer is very efficiently, it's very happy to do that, then it can be 20 hours since your last meal and everything still feels great. Essentially, my body doesn't know the difference between 5 hours after my last meal and 15 hours after my last meal. Why then do most of us not have that experience? I know if you'd asked me 2 months ago, I would have said, I get hungry after about 5 or 6 hours. Imagine for a second the complete opposite. Imagine I'm on a low-fat diet. So most of my energy comes from carbohydrates and a tiny little bit comes from fats. When I eat a meal, 90% of that is really easy, quick burning fuel that gets used within 4 or 5 hours. And then at the end of that 4 or 5 hours, we're left with this fuel that my body doesn't really know how to deal with. And so that just goes into storage and I get hungry again, and then I eat another meal, and that same meal has 90% quick burning fuel and 10% slow burning fuel. And so by the time the quick burning fuel is done, again, my body says, I don't like this slow burning fuel. I'm going to be hungry again, and we'll just put that slow burning fuel into storage again. And so essentially that can lead to not only feeling hungry every couple of hours, but also consistently gaining a significant amount of weight. Does that ring a bell in our culture? The idea that you have to be hungry all the time and that's the only way to manage weight? Anyway, that's a bit of a rant due to how excited I was at finding an answer to that question. Please do not think that I'm trying to give anyone advice. Everyone's body's different. So this is what I've learned about my body. I hope some of the insights that I've learned have been useful for you, but if anything is not, please just ignore it completely. You're the expert on your own body. For me, where I've landed after all of this is that my physical fatigue that I was experiencing a couple of months ago is much better, thankfully. Unfortunately, mental fatigue is still a challenge, but that will be the topic of next week's video. If you've been following closely, you'll know that I have not been well this year at all in terms of chronic health stuff. I've had to drastically cut back my coaching and pause book writing for a while. Thankfully, I'm back to working about 1 day a week so I can at least keep doing some videos. It's still a pretty challenging time, so if you're in a position to support financially a little bit on Patreon, that would be much appreciated. Alternatively, if you'd like to get more involved, there's also an Autism from the Inside membership available on the website. Plus, it comes with full on-demand access to our webinar library. So considering either of those would help significantly so that I can keep doing this work, even though this week was a bit of a tangent. So I'd better leave it there. Thanks for watching today. Please leave a comment if you can, and I will see you again next week.